So, what are your thoughts on what's going on with Florida and this 17-year-old kid who seems to be a puppet of CNN?
Okay. First of all, asking it that way is incredibly biased.
Yeah, I know
Okay.
exactly. That's why I did it.
This is the same guy that conservatives accused of being a crisis actor. And how many thousands of people grabbed that and then reposted it on Facebook
Yeah, it was not true.
without looking it up and validating it,
Well,
which is half the problem.
Then when you say the conservatives, it's like you're saying everybody who didn't vote Republican or vote Democrat is when you lump people together like that, the conservatives.
Well, only in the same ilk of people saying that everyone who voted Democrat is a liberal.
Right. Well, I understand that, but when you say the conservatives did it, you're saying that I did it, and that it, you know what I mean? So
I got you. I didn't say
some
conservatives, but
well,
it certainly was a conservative who accused the kid.
Oh, probably.
Indirectly.
Probably.
Oh, no, it was of being a crisis actor.
Yeah. Well, that turned out not to be true.
Which was ludicrous.
So, I put on Facebook that I posted something, a blog post on my blog, ojerry.romix.com, about missed opportunities with stopping this kid. And part of the reason I did that is I just get so tired of people.
What do you mean stopping him?
Well, he could have been stopped before he even bought a gun.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you know what it is? I think a lot of it has to do, honestly, Jer, with we don't have a national sharing of a lot of different kinds of information, including psychological.
We're supposed to.
I know, but we don't.
Well,
I did a whole report on the Virginia Tech shooting guy, okay, as part of one of my classes that I was taking, and it was shocking, all of the red flags. And of course, I realized that hindsight's 20/20, but all of the red flags that were raised by this kid, you know what I'm saying? That nobody, and had the people been able to share information, it never, he would never have been able to amass all that kind of, that many guns and ammunition.
Well, let me give you the thumbnail, and then you can go and read the post.
Okay.
Probably between 25 and 40 times the police were called to his house since 2011.
Yeah, I heard that he had a lot of...
On every, and then mental health people went there too, because on Instagram he showed pictures of himself cutting himself. But everyone who went, low risk, if any risk. At his school, he was caught bringing bullets and a knife. So you know what the school did to discipline him?
No.
Disallowed him from bringing a backpack. Then he got into, he got accused of calling names and stuff like that, which in the state of Florida is actually assault, and punching a kid, beating a kid up. That's why he got expelled.
Okay.
So he had been suspended several times. He had beaten a kid up rather than call the police, because Broward County has this policy of leniency now, because they don't want it to be a pipeline to prison, is what NPR called it. But then I saw somebody else who said that, yeah, they were just trying to make their numbers look good for federal funding. So rather than call the police when this kid beat somebody up, they just kicked him out. We're not going to worry about him anymore.
Well, come on, now that's not fair to say we're not going to worry about him anymore.
Well, they didn't worry about him anymore until he showed up with a gun.
Yeah, but Jer, so many people throw everything on the schools.
Well, I know, but in this case, the school, if the school, okay, so then he posts on somebody's Facebook, not Facebook, I'm sorry, on a YouTube video, he makes a comment, I want to be a professional school shooter. And somebody else, and another social media post, at least one other social media post, I want to blow up my school or shoot up my school, something to that effect. So the guy whose YouTube channel he had posted it on notified YouTube about the post and the FBI about the post. Now, the kid's username on YouTube is Nicholas Cruz. The FBI couldn't find him. They didn't hand over those reports to the Miami office, who would have been the ones to take care of it. Somebody else from another state called and said they were worried about this kid because of the stuff they'd seen on social media. Somebody who knew him called the FBI and said, this kid is going to blow. I mean, I'm afraid that he might go shoot up a school, is what the person told the FBI. Nobody did anything about it. If one of those people had done what they were supposed to do, one of those agencies, he would have been charged, at least. Whether or not he would have been found guilty or not, I don't know. But if he had been charged and found guilty, if he had been hospitalized, and then if Florida had sent that information to the NICS, the National Instant Criminal Background Check that the FBI uses, that would have flagged it, and the kid would not have been able to buy a gun legally, which is what he did because no one had reported any of this stuff.
I understand.
That's not to say he couldn't have gotten the gun illegally, but it would have been much more difficult for him to.
Right.
And if he had been in jail or in a hospital, mental hospital, he wouldn't have been in a school shooting it up. Now, Florida is not the only place where somebody didn't report. Remember the Texas shooting a while back, the church shooting?
Oh yeah.
And where a guy
went into an African-American church and they accepted him and everything was cool. And then he
no,
came back.
that was a different place. This is in Texas where the guy went, and I think they were all white people in this instance, where the guy shot people in the church, but then he was shot by a neighbor of the church who came out with his AR-15 and shot the guy.
No, I didn't hear about that one.
Yeah. Well, anyway, this guy had been court-martialed from the Air Force for spousal and child abuse. But after he got out of the Air Force, he went and bought a gun legally because the Air Force had not reported.
I did hear about that.
The abuse. Yeah. So the FBI should have done a better job investigating the claims that came into the guy. But the law of the background check was rendered moot because nobody was given the information to the background. You know what I mean? So that he wasn't in the database. So yes, the law didn't work because the people who were responsible for enforcing and following the law didn't follow up on there. It was private citizens who were sounding the alarm. So that was a main part of what my blog post was, is that, you know, before we start yelling about we need more laws, how about we actually do what we're supposed to with the ones that are on the books? Because that could have stopped this kid. I guess don't know about every other instance, but in this instance,
understand
that kid
one of the big things that people keep going back to, though, is, well, criminals are always going to find a way to get guns, and if we outlaw guns, then only outlaws are going to have guns. Is a ridiculous. I mean, that kind of flawed logic means that since laws are going to be broken, we should never make laws.
No, I don't think that's what they're saying. I think what they're saying is, though, if you take away something that is a right and
Jer, there is no guarantee that you should be able to have a semi-automatic rifle. That is not a right. That is not a right. You don't read in to the Second Amendment, which was made in the 1700s, that every available weapon should be able to be bought by every citizen and all kinds of ammunition. That's a ludicrous thing to say.
You know what? That is only ludicrous if you apply that to everything else that was written in the Constitution.
No, because what I'm saying is, let's really read what it says. It talks about a militia. And at the time that law was written, that amendment was written, a militia was honestly only formed to guard against invasions by people we thought, or emergencies by people we thought to be, because we didn't have a standing army.
Did you not read my comment on this on Facebook to you?
Yes.
That militia clause is a dependent clause.
Jerry, it says
without it.
It says no. It is. That is the only reason that citizens are allowed to.
Say. It says a militia being necessary for the proof of a free state or whatever, comma, separates the clause. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed is independent of the clause.
So then what you're saying is that guarantees the right for every citizen to own any ammunition and any gun or any weapon of ever.
I don't know about that.
That is ridiculous, far-reaching. We're talking about semi-automatic rifles for an 18-year-old. It is ridiculous.
Why is it ridiculous?
We won't even let the guy drink legally unless he's 21.
Why is it ridiculous? Because it's semi-automatic. Do you know what semi-automatic means? Every time you pull the trigger, it fires. That's what a semi-automatic is.
Exactly. Okay. And that kind of military weapon is used for what? What do you hunt with that kind of rifle?
Almost.
No. Baloney. No, not true. Hunting rifles that are specifically designed for killing certain animals.
Semi-automatic?
So what's the AR-15 designed for?
For shooting. It's the most popular sports.
Shooting what?
Shooting targets, shooting deer, shooting game.
That gun was designed to kill people. That is not a hunting rifle to shoot squirrels or deer or bear or elephants or anything like that.
Why not?
What do you mean, why not? Look at it. It is a military kind of weapon, dude.
Just because of what it looks like?
Let's go back to the 18-year-old, okay? If we believe, and you and I were both legally able to drink at 18, okay?
Yeah.
All right. And then they changed it everywhere in the United States to 21, which means obviously everyone agreed that, yes, 18-year-olds, and tell me if I'm reading too much into this, are not mature enough to be able to handle alcohol. And yet we think that 18-year-olds are mature enough to have all kinds of crazy guns.
Well, you know, I'm not arguing that 18 is the age. You know, that's.
But see, that's what
for a lot of people, it probably is.
When I talk about common sense gun laws, responsible common sense gun laws, which the NRA has a horrible time with any time you talk about any kind of gun regulations whatsoever. That's what I'm talking about. Just like, and I threw the car thing up to you, and you go way back. Oh, wait a minute. No, it's a right guaranteed. I still disagree with you completely. It's only a right when we're talking about militia.
No.
That is when, in the split, we'll
that's
disagree on that.
That's not even grammatically correct.
Disagree. That is the way the Second Amendment is written.
Okay, but do you understand what a militia was back then?
Yes, I looked up militia. Actually, before I posted that, a militia was because we didn't have a standing army to do it when it was for invading forces and was for emergencies. It didn't say anything about, well, I've got to have that kind of a weapon in my home to protect my family. That's a bunch of crap.
Where do you think they were getting those weapons from?
What does that have to do with anything?
Militia. Where do you think the militia was getting the weapons
Manufacturers? From? People who actually, back in that day, they were probably being hand-forged.
Well, maybe some of them, but they were the people's own guns. They owned them. So you can't wait until you need a militia to arm the people.
Jerry, we don't need a militia. That's why we have standing armies now, and navies, and Air Force, and Marines, and Coast Guard. We are not expecting come on, don't kid yourself. We're expecting the common citizenry to band together when somebody invades us, and that's why we need to have guns.
But what I'm saying is the militia part, well, that's cool. It sort of puts a little yellow circle around whoever's talking.
Okay, so anyway, I'm
anyway, so when I was talking about the whole blog thing, what was really frustrating me, and I've seen it on both sides, and you will see it on both sides depending on what the issue was. But in this particular case, it was far and away friends and loved ones, people who I respect and who I know to be educated, intelligent people, posting crap that was so far from the truth. It was
about what are we talking about?
About the shooting in Florida.
Oh, I got you.
You know, posting a map that somebody had made that said states where you can buy a gun without an ID, and then states where you can vote without an ID. And of course, there were no states on the vote one, but on the where you can buy a gun without ID, all but like California, Hawaii, and New York. That is ridiculous. It's illegal. You have to have an ID to buy a gun anywhere in the United States, except at private sales. No, gun shows. If the seller is a licensed seller, he has to.
Okay, but if you walk into, those gun shows they have in St. Louis had a huge one at the convention center every year.
But if there were licensed,
they have all kinds of guns.
But
I don't think you have to be licensed.
They have if you are a federal firearms license, federal firearms dealer with a license, no matter where you sell the gun, you still have to run that background check before you can.
But there are people who can walk into, because there was a video posted of a kid. I think he was 14.
Yeah, and if you watch the whole video, he didn't get the gun. He only got in there long enough to hold the gun, take a picture of the gun, and then give it back to him. He didn't even fill in the paperwork.
Okay. When you go to a gun show, do you have to be a federally sanctioned gun dealer to be at a gun show?
Then I don't know, because I've never tried to get in one and sell guns. Private individuals can sell guns, but there's a limit on it. There's a limit on it, just like private individuals who want to sell a car. Well, you can sell your car, but if you start buying used cars and you got 42 cars in your yard and you're selling them as a private individual, you got to be licensed as a dealer. Same things with guns. If I've got a gun and I decide I want to sell it to get money to buy another gun, and I sell it to somebody, now this is going to be anecdotal, but a lot of people that I know that are semi-active gun supporters, if they sell a private gun, they won't sell it to somebody who doesn't have a Georgia weapons license.
Just as
a safety measure for themselves. They're not required to do that. I could sell you a gun. Now the other thing is you can't buy a gun out of state from a licensed dealer. You can only buy a gun in the state in which you are a resident.
I got you. Okay. I'm honestly, I took Goody to a firing range for his 16th birthday. You know, I mean, it's fun. I don't have a problem with it. I don't personally own one. I really don't think I want one in my house. Okay. But I think that we need to just be responsible. And that's why I threw the car thing up, which you had a problem with. But I still think, you know, they are similar in that, you know, that we love cars. America loves cars. And people don't seem to have a problem with having to have insurance and having to pass a test to get a license in order to legally operate. Why can't we? I mean, I remember even for free, like the National Turkey Federation gave gun safety classes.
Oh yeah, you can get them. I went. Yeah. And now, the
way we got our motorcycle licenses, Joe, we went to a class. Well, friggin' go to a class to learn how to fire a gun.
And I think you should, and I did. And it varies. Some states are more stringent than others when it comes to getting a license. Not buying, but getting a license to carry a gun. And the licenses vary from place to place. Like in Georgia, you can carry a gun. You can be armed in your home, in your car, or in your place of business without a license. Other than that, if you want to have a weapon, not just a gun, a weapon, if you want to have a knife, if you want to have a billy club on you out in public somewhere and you don't have a license, that's a felony. So you have to have a license. The only thing you have to do to have a license is go through another background check that is a little bit stringent kind of the thing.
And is the background check
printed? The sheriff runs the background. The county sheriff runs the background check, and you have to be fingerprinted, and then you pay a certain fee. Other states have a certain amount of training, a certain amount of hours of training you have to do. But I went, and the sheriff in my county would occasionally run these firearm safety courses, and it was really cool. I actually took time off of work to do it. The first, it's like a 3 or 4 day thing. You go for a couple hours. The first day is all classroom stuff where you go over laws, safety procedures.
Sure.
The second day is a little bit of classroom, and then they let you go on the simulator.
You mean like the law enforcement guys do?
Yeah, right there. And so you've got this Glock that shoots air pellets. They have them specially fitted. And there's this big, huge screen that takes up the whole wall, and you have certain scenarios where you have to decide whether or not you're going to shoot. And it actually, because there's a little beam on the gun, if you shoot the guy and hit him, he falls down.
Oh, that's fun.
And if you don't, and when the cops do it, they have like these little rubber pellets that the bad guys shoot at you. They turn that off when civilians are doing it, so you're not getting pelleted, you know.
Oh, that's
But if you don't do it, then you get shot. And it was cool.
Shot.
It was really cool. And then the last day, you went out on the range.
Okay.
On the county sheriff's range. So I went through that class and got a certificate. And I think people should, but I can understand the argument that because it is a right, whether or not you agree that it should be, or whether or not you agree with how the language is written, right now, that at least is the latest ruling from the Supreme Court.
Oh, I know. It's been interpreted that way.
Yeah.
I understand that. I still don't agree with it, but okay, that's fine.
Yeah. But because it is a right, because it is a right, and there are certain limits allowed to be put on rights, and we've seen certain limits on a lot of our rights, including the First Amendment.
There are certain yell fire in a crowded theater, even though we have free speech. Understand.
Exactly. So there are certain things.
Libel somebody, even though we have freedom of the press.
But if you're going to make arguments based on, and I realize that this is perhaps taking things to the absurd to prove a point, but when people say you really should only be able to have a musket if you're going to stick with how the Constitution, well, that's fine, but you got to tell me about that in a letter you write on parchment with a quill pen.
I read that. Yeah,
you know,
I know. Our very conservative friend wrote that on.
He used that particular thing, but I mean, I've heard that before. You know that.
Oh, I know.
You know, the founding fathers probably knew, and you got to give them more credit than what a lot of people do, as far as knowing what was coming down the line at the time that the Constitution was written and the Bill of Rights were introduced, there were advances being made in firearms, in semi-automatic weapons were coming on the way. Different ammunition was advancing. They weren't in a vacuum, you know what I mean, when they wrote this. So they had to realize that things would be advancing, right. And then other things would be. I mean, they saw that they knew that the printing press had been invented not too long before, so there'll be advances in communication, with telegraph, and all that kind of stuff. So,
but to be hyperbolic, then too, I could take it to the extreme of normal citizens should not be able to buy and operate machine guns and tanks and nuclear weapons. And the Second Amendment does not give them the right to those things. Okay?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So just like you can't yell fire, you can't set off a nuclear bomb in your backyard.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So
and there are certain things that are, again, like the background checks, and the NRA has actually been in favor of those background checks. I don't know why people paint the NRA as being,
Jerry, have you listened to the woman that they put out there?
I don't know.
Oh, I know what we're talking about. The NRA.
Oh.
Okay. So look, the French dude, last name guy, LaPierre or whatever, and the woman that was
Wayne.
They're
what?
What? They're spokespeople.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
From the NRA.
Yeah.
And I think the latest that I've heard is they have how many? 5 million members?
Maybe something like that.
Okay, and what's the population of the United States?
300
million. Well over 300 million, okay? Yeah. And yet we have lots of Republicans from one party in particular kowtowing to the NRA as if they were God, okay? And they won't go, oh, and don't try to say that that's not true. You know it is. They won't even go for ridiculously small increments of laws that would help nip some of this ridiculousness in the bud.
Well, again, to be fair, what we just talked about when we opened this was there might be enough laws on the books if they actually were enforced, and if people who were supposed to be reporting to these different agencies actually did that, at least in the most recent case.
In a couple of cases, that is true, but I think that it's easy to look after something bad happens. Mm-hmm. It's easy to look back and say, "Oh my gosh, I should have seen this," or somebody did. I mean, how many different warnings go up from concerned citizens about people who have threatened weird things on social media?
Yeah,
right.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And those things you have to look at them seriously, or even if 99 out of 100 of them turn out to be just some guy blowing smoke, that 100th one is Nicholas Cruz. So
Agree.
You've got to take them seriously. But the thing was, they weren't taken seriously.
Oh, obviously.
No, I was going to say something. I can't remember what the heck it was. This is terrible. I'm getting too old for this kind of stuff.
I know, right? Hey, we're both wearing reading glasses, so we are getting old.
The thing with the NRA, and well, yeah, okay, they're a lobby and they've got some influence. But I saw
Jerry,
a thing. What?
That's a friggin' misunderstatement, and you know it. They've got some influence. It's ridiculous the influence they have.
I think
that means they're doing their job well.
I think that they have spent maybe in the last 10, 15, 20 years, maybe, and I think this is probably an exaggeration of how much, $100 million in lobbying and on campaigns and stuff like that.
I know, because people show how much each of, especially like Cruz in Florida, right? Yeah. Or Rubio in Florida is a big one. Mitch McConnell. Yeah. Okay. We're in the millions of dollars to those specific individuals.
Right. To their
campaigns. Tell me if they're contributing.
Well, there are certain limits on how much you can contribute to a campaign, too.
Yeah, but a lot of those limits were done away with, if you'll remember. And now, in fact, a lot of times people giving money don't even have to report where it's from. Because the finance reform, look that bad boy up.
I don't know.
All right, I was watching Jon Stewart, and
well, he's totally unbiased.
No, but he did definitely give. I certainly think he's less biased and more truthful than Fox. Okay. Anyway, he gave an example where he could form a super PAC for the guy who hosts Dave Letterman's show now.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I know
you know what I'm talking about, right? Because he used to come on after John. Anyway, they did, just for fun, They formed a super PAC, and as long as the one didn't tell the other exactly how to do the money, he could spend that money any way that he wanted.
Oh, really?
And of course, the person that they were digging on was Cruz, the guy who looks like a mass murderer who ran for president, okay? Because he was dumping all of this film footage of him talking to his family on YouTube so that the super PAC could grab it and then use it, because that was his way around. You know what I mean? And it was horrible, Jeff.
Right. Well, just because
it was just
doesn't mean somebody else. But the labor unions outspend the NRA by like 1,000 times. As far as
I don't belong to any labor unions.
No, but I'm just saying. You know, people talk about the NRA having influence there. That what they spend is a drop in the bucket compared to a lot of different lobbying organizations.
Well, and oil companies too.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make then the oil companies or the NRA any less evil.
No. Well, it doesn't make them any less evil or any more good. But just compare, if you're going to say, yeah, the NRA spends a lot. Well, okay, yeah, but they're not the only ones who do it, and they're not the.
No, but
certainly isn't all on the right-hand side of the political spectrum that is doing it.
Agreed. To see them come out, though, and every time something horrible happens, to then claim, and then you hear a lot of Republican politicians restate the exact same verbiage that they used. I mean, it's painfully clear the kind of influence that they have.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that is one of the things
both sides do that. Both sides are
the majority of the population. Okay. The majority of the population supports having a little bit more stringent gun control laws, and yet they are not being enacted by the people we elected to represent us.
Okay.
And something is wrong with that system. Okay. So then, of course, the scapegoat is going to be the NRA because they're being very successful. They're listening, or they're allowing the money that's being funneled into their campaigns unduly influence them, which they shouldn't do.
Perhaps. Or it could be, and again, if read my blog post, because I said this too.
Because I have so much extra free time.
That's you do. It's only 1,500 words. You can read
stop it. Go ahead.
I hear people say a lot, and I read, once they get past the stuff that is just blatantly false on either side, but they don't come up with any ideas that would actually work.
Sure. That
would be doable. So that's my main thing is because this is such an emotional issue for both sides. And a lot of times emotions are going to crowd out your intellect and your better reasoning and thinking. You got to, first of all, what do we hope to accomplish? And then what is the best way to accomplish that? We hope to accomplish, let's not get any more kids shot up in school. How about that for a first thing?
I think that's a great idea.
I am totally there with you on that. So let's look at how we can accomplish that. And there's banning weapons that have never been used in these kind of, and I'm not saying that just the AR-15, but I've heard I saw something on YouTube or a news feed this morning or yesterday where some group of Democrats is the Kathy Gifford group, I think, saying that we maybe should look at muskets because there's this new technology coming out where you can put a silencer on a musket and fire a 50-millimeter round out of a musket. First of all, I don't know how a silencer on a musket would work because where the silencers go is how you have to
that's way off the topic. Oh my gosh.
No, I'm saying no. They said we need to look at enacting legislation on that, which is like, okay, why? That has nothing to do.
That's ridiculous.
With the topic.
I'm not even talking about banning anything. I'm talking about making some of the laws somewhat more stringent, let's say. Obviously, we need to keep weapons out of the hands of people who are mentally unstable.
Right.
I mean, I think no one's going to disagree with that one. Okay.
But the thing that is great, that's a great premise or a great place to build from.
Absolutely.
Now let's figure out how we do that.
Right.
So saying we should do it is one thing, figuring out the best way to do it. And I'm not even talking about gun rights. I'm talking about people's rights of privacy, rights of due process, things like that to figure out, okay, who is the person that maybe is prone to go over the top. Now, I saw a thing where I think it was the governor of Kentucky was talking to some reporter or something. So, we got to look at this. Nobody wants this anymore, but let's look at it from a logical standpoint. First of all, we have fewer guns now, and I don't know if this is true, but this is what he said. Fewer guns now than when I was a kid growing up back in the 50s. Or maybe it was fewer guns per capita. There may have been more guns per capita back then because guns weren't as big a deal. You know what I mean? Before.
Yeah.
And he said, and we had kids bringing guns to school. It was like after Christmas break, if they'd gotten a new shotgun, they bring it to school to show their friends. And then we'd go hunting after school. People weren't shooting up schools back then. What's changed? Well, it's not the guns. We still got the guns. We had the guns back then. Maybe it's the people who are shooting them up. And one of the things he says, look at all the medication people are on now. You ever watch the commercials on some of these medications? The little disclaimer at the end may cause suicidal thoughts. Those kinds. And that was something I never thought. That it may be a contributing factor. I don't know if there is one reason that you can pin on why people are going into schools, and even if they do it once or twice.
Well, you remember back in the day, it used to be they referred to it as going postal because
a postal guy was the first one to do it. Yeah,
exactly, right. And it was more than just one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Heck, I remember playing a game, Jerry, called Postal. It was horrible, and it was about a guy just. You know what I mean? It was crazy. Yeah. I don't know, and I'm not. That's why I don't think it is just a gun issue. Although I think that has to play kind of a part in that. We have to make it harder for those people who have prior mental health convictions or problems or whatever you want to call it. They shouldn't be buying guns.
Right. Well,
you know what I mean?
And actually, again, if that information is in the database and they go to buy a gun and they fill out the report, even if they lie on the form, if they're using their real name and their name is in the system, they will not be allowed to buy a gun.
Yeah.
But that's only. I saw a thing where only 38 of the states report that kind of stuff to the FBI, and even those 38 states don't report 100% of it. So
I know, which is ridiculous. That was one of the big things that came out of the Virginia Tech thing, because Virginia as a state wasn't one that reported to the federal database.
Yeah,
they do now. Now that we have how many people dead. Okay,
exactly.
After the fact, and I think if we probably looked at maybe what the commonalities are for the people who commit these massive gun shootings in schools, there has to be something. You know what I mean? They all seem to be predominantly white males.
Yeah.
Okay.
And young.
Yeah.
Current or recently or recent students. So they're all young.
Right. Yeah. Or current students, like the guys in Columbine. And I read the book, and they weren't. A lot of people thought, oh, these are these guys were emo kids, and they were not. They were, they seemed by all outward appearances to be rather typical, actually.
Yeah. Now this kid didn't, and the kid at the.
He'd been in trouble. He and his brother had been in trouble numerous times.
Oh yeah. Well, and part of the thing too is his mom had just died like within 6 months before, and his dad had died a while before. He was living with a different family. Again, there were all kinds of warnings. What was the one, the grammar school?
Oh, Sandy Hook.
Yeah. That kid. I can't remember how old he was. I think he was beyond high school age, maybe. But it wasn't his mom a teacher there or something?
I can't remember. I know it's terrible.
He stole her gun. Matter of fact, I think he maybe shot her first. But anyway, he took her gun. So he didn't buy it legally. So that sort of bypassed the system.
Right. And you can't. Obviously, you can't prevent that kind of stuff every time. You know what I mean? Right. Because there are going to be people that doesn't mean we shouldn't have laws, obviously.
I agree.
But there are going to be people who find ways to bypass them.
Yeah.
That happens.
But if we make it easy for them to do, go about doing it legally, just not set off that alarm that they're stealing a gun somewhere. I don't know.
Oh, I know.
And if so, in case this actually shows up on YouTube somewhere, like, comment, and subscribe below. You got to say that stuff. That's what the kids do.
Okay. That's what the kids do. That's
that out. Next time, what do you want to talk about next time? You want to talk about the greatest baseball team in history?
Oh, no, because no. That'll probably be a New York Yankee team of some kind.
I've been doing some research on that, and that'd be an interesting thing to talk about eventually, maybe.
Agreed.
I'll
I
send
would
you my
actually have to
research.
look some stuff up about that, though.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
right.
as of yes, see, we're talking about baseball. Well, we better do some research. Guns, we'll just take off the top of our
That's
head.
right.
Who the heck cares?
We're there. I know.
That may be indicative of the bigger problem.
That's true.